What is up, YouTube? Thank you for checking out my new video. Today we are going to be using the sous vide method to cook tiny steaks. So originally when my wife and I talked about this, I told her I wanted to sous vide some steaks. Fortunately / unfortunately, we use Walmart, where you go on the app, pick out the groceries, and then pick up your groceries. Well, the people who select your groceries obviously have a thing for tiny steaks. So rather than just abort mission, I figured we're gonna give this a shot and see how it goes. So as I mentioned, we are going to be using the sous vide method for cooking these sirloin steaks. Sous vide is obviously comes to us from the French, one of the few sweet things that they gave us. And sous vide literally translates to under a vacuum, I believe. So we're not going to be using a vacuum.
What's in this closet?
What are you doing?
Well, my, Mr. Hoover's come to visit.
I don't want to see Mr. Hoover.
I wonder if Mr. Hoover has anything to say about all this.
Lois, this is not funny. I really don't want to see Mr. Hoover. Stop it! Stop it! It's scaring me! Leave me alone! It's so loud!
To cook these, we're actually just going to be using water, but where it comes from is we are going to season this meat, put it into plastic bags, like Ziploc bags, and theoretically you should vacuum seal them, but I don't have a vacuum sealer, and that's okay. So I'm just going to use the heat from the water to help seal the bags, get all the air out when I lower them in. So we'll get to that part later. This is all sounds complicated. It's actually super easy, and you'll see after you check this video out. Again, we have tiny steaks. I'm gonna season them liberally with black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, a touch of paprika, and everyone's favorite, salt. Quick thing, are you filming this part? Yeah, thank you. Do you know if I said onion powder or did I say garlic powder twice?
I don't.
You have to do it over just this?
No, I don't spit it.
Very cool. Here's your phone. All right, so just putting on the last ingredient here, which is, like I said, the paprika. So I went ahead and seasoned both sides, which is key whenever you're doing sous vide. One thing I want to show you is it's a little challenging to get the sides of these things. So I usually stack them up like this, and then I want to hit them with just a few of the ingredients. And the reason being is oftentimes we forget about this part, but it is nice so that everyone feels included and we make sure we get the entire piece of meat. Here we are with the sous vide, my instant AccuSlim sous vide. I love this because it's super simple. I'm never cooking for giant groups, so even though it seems like a small wand, it's actually perfect for what we use it for. So I've got this tub of water. I didn't fill it up to the maximum because we're just not going to need it with the amount of meat that we have. So really simple here. We are going to cook at 140, okay? 140 sounds a little high, and it might even be a little high, but I live in a household where, let's just say, not everyone wants their meat making noises when you serve it to them. So if I undercook it, I'm going to have a bunch of unhappy campers. So I'll let you decide how pink you want the center of the meat to be. It's still going to be great. It's still going to be insanely flavorful, but I have to be a little more careful because if the 10-year-old cuts into his meat and it's super bright pink, I'm gonna have to hear all the complaints. Keep that in mind when you go to cook. Again, I'm gonna do it for 140. It says 4 hours on there. I'm cool with that. I'm only gonna cook this actually for about an hour and 15 minutes. That's gonna be plenty for this cuts of meat. It does vary depending on the size of meat that you use, but honestly, you know, if you want to do it for an hour and a half, hour and 45 for a larger piece of meat, it's totally fine. You could also leave it in there for 4 hours, 8 hours. It does not matter, because the idea here is that this wand is keeping that temperature consistently at whatever temperature you have it set at. So that's the beauty of sous vide. It's kind of like a smoker in that you can somewhat set it and forget it. So we're going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to keep it at 4 hours. I'm going to set a timer with Alexa. I don't want to say it too loud because then she starts listening to everything I have to say. So here we go. And we're on. So right now the water is at 67 degrees Fahrenheit. This thing is starting to hum. If you listen closely, you can hear it. It's working. So this will only take a little bit to get the water up to 140, which is the desired temperature. And then we'll bag the meat and take it for a swim. Any advice? You are my director and editor. All right, so the sous vide is at 134 currently. Again, we're going to try to get it up to 140. So I've got these steaks seasoned. I have gigantic, probably very expensive Ziploc bags. You don't have to use those, but that's what we had, so I'm going to use them. So I'm going to take these steaks. I'm going to slide them in. Now, you could use smaller bags and just put one per bag in, but we're gonna go for efficiency here, so I'm gonna go 4. I also had my lovely and talented assistant slice very thin sections of butter to add into there, as that's always nice to have. So now that we got these bagged, we're gonna let them go swimming. So we're gonna take this top off. And we have the bags opened. And you'll see when you lower them in, the air naturally wants to escape the bag. Now, we are not going to have to close this bag because it's entirely submerged. So you see the air going out? So we're going to take that and we're merely going to clip it to the side here. Now that the steaks are totally submerged, we're going to set a timer for approximately 1 hour. Again, cooking time might vary depending on the size of the steak, but for these little guys, it's not going to need more than an hour. So we'll check back in a little bit. We are at the a little over 1 hour mark, so these should be good to go. So nice and easy. I'm going to pull these off. So I'll remove this guy. This guy just helps keep the steaks down there so they don't pop up. I got a towel here that I'm going to lay these on. I'm going to grab my handy dandy glove just in case these get hot. As you can see, I'll turn these up so they don't spill. As you can see, these are still moist. The seasoning is still on them, still visible, which is good. So what we're going to do is we're going to dab these dry. Okay? Now, when you're dabbing them, it's very possible, if not likely, that we're going to lift up some of the seasoning. So that is okay, because as you'll see in a moment, we're going to apply a little bit more seasoning. I am going to hit them with the temp probe, brought to you by ThermoPen. Right now they're reading at a little bit over 130, which is good because when we take them outside and apply that heat in the cast iron skillet, they're going to get increased temperature. So here we are. We're going to move quickly and we're going to add a little bit more seasoning to these. So we're outside now. We are going to use the Sidekick on my smoker, which I got for just these type of purposes, where I can get an open flame so that I could do grilled chicken and a number of other things, but it works really great in this situation. So we're going to use the giant cast iron skillet. Going to put that on there. my wife was kind enough to mix me, and this is a key ingredient, a garlic herb butter. So this has all kinds of wonderful things like garlic, basil, parsley, and many other wonderful ingredients. So there's a lot of recipes for garlic herb butter, but she knows how I like it, and this one turned out beautifully. So I'm going to try to not use all this because this is very excessive, but hopefully it'll get us through. As this heats up, the cast iron skillet, we're going to eventually add in the butter and let that start to simmer in the pan. This will tell us kind of when it is go time. All right, so as you can see, this is heating up nicely, and we want it to be very hot so that when we put the steaks on there, they're getting good sear to them. So we're gonna give it a second, let it bubble up, and then we're going in.
Yep.
All right, so we've got this cast iron heated up. We're ready to go. We're gonna put the meat on there. What you're aiming for is about 1 minute on each side. So you hear that sizzle? We like that. All right, and I'm only gonna put 4 in there for now because I want to be able to focus on what I'm doing here. And if I have 7, 8 pieces of meat on there, it might get a little tricky. So what you can do is, while this is cooking, you can move this around and you take this butter that's running off and you scoop it onto the top or whatever side is not cooking currently. Also, when you cook with the sous vide, you don't have that charred texture, which a lot of people miss when they're eating a steak. Some people do it or eat it without doing this part. I definitely prefer the seared part. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip them. As you can see, they have been charred and they look beautiful. So I'm gonna leave them on there for about a minute. And then I'm gonna show you a trick that I learned from the masters. So we go a little bit more butter on there so that we can hit this side. I'm gonna edit this out so my wife doesn't see it. That way she can think she's still eating a nice healthy steak.
Am I actually supposed to edit that out?
But
Like,
no.
oh, okay.
Okay, so now here's where the trick comes. Again, I learned this from some of the masters that I studied under, aka a bunch of people on YouTube a long time ago. So we're gonna make sure we hit the sides of these because we want that char on the sides. See the difference that makes? Okay. All right, now we're gonna put them on the top here. It's a little bit trickier, but we got this. All right, and then one more lap through the butter. All right, so we got those off. As you can see, they look beautiful. They're tiny, but they're beautiful. And we're gonna do the next round here. All right, now we're gonna let these cool for 4 to 5 minutes, and then we'll cut into them and see what we got. All right, so we've let them sit for a little bit over 5 minutes. So we're gonna cut into them, see what we got. There you go. So as you can see, still a little pink in the center, but cooked well enough to where I won't have any arguments for the kids. We'll taste them, we'll let you know how it went, but overall, very pleased. And as you can see, maybe a little extra, but still a cool and easy way to cook tiny steaks.
Gotta find my way to you, even though you're never